Welcome to the Bret Boone podcast. I am Bret Boone. Today I'm joined by a Cy Young Award winner, two-time World Series champ, Padres Hall of Famer, currently is an analyst with MLB Network. And most importantly, we are both Padres fantasy campers this week. Peeves, a long week. We're almost done, but it's been a lot of fun to this point. We're on day, I think tomorrow's the finals. We got the going away party tomorrow night, and then we'll get back to our families on Saturday. But it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on the program.
Booney, it's good to be with you, buddy. I'm freaking gassed. It's been a long week. I know.
And by the way, for the people out there, ladies and gentlemen, Jake Peavy. I don't even think I just started into the peeve. We were off camera conversation mode. But all right.
Well, like you said, we've been together all week, and we need to start by telling them what your team's doing. You're running away with this thing, but all the pressure now is on you guys to win the championship as good as you're playing. You can't play this good and fall on your face tomorrow.
And I've been talking a lot of smack too. I kind of get up in the morning and I say, yeah, if we won again, I don't know what it's like to lose. So if I lose tomorrow, I'm sure I got an earful coming. But I got my ace. He's locked. He's loaded. McGarity, MVP of the camp. We'll see. But as I've seen before, hey, it's never over. It's never over. Anything can happen.
That's the truth. Look, you come from a long line of we talk about our DNA and stuff, and just you thank me for coming on. It's been a pleasure, this week to hang out with you, get to know you, spend some more time together. Me and you know all the same people, but just hadn't been in the same space a whole lot. And then obviously your family, your father, brothers. It's fun to come on and talk some shop and be with you this week.
I told you yesterday we were talking during our picture time. I had a cool story for you. I've told the story many times. A lot of people have heard it, but it's cool. Finally, I get you on the show. I wanted to tell you this. So it's early 2000s. You're just a kid. You're just coming up to the big leagues. And Ray Boone, my grandpa, who's a huge part of my life growing up, first probably baseball influence on me. He's the guy when I was 1 year old putting a bat in my hand. Anyway, he played a long time in the big leagues, and in his last 40 years before he passed away, he was a scout. So he was always through the years coming up with these names. Yeah, Bret, you better look out for this guy. Look out for this. Anyway, fast forward. It's a Sunday day game. And first of all, let me set it up. Ray Boone, proudest man possibly, not only about his family and our generations of baseball players, but maybe one of the proudest men I've ever met as far as defending his generation. To Ray Boone, there was nobody better ever than Ted Williams. Nobody, you couldn't tell him. You couldn't talk. It wasn't debatable. Fringe players in the big leagues, he would always tell me in his day they'd be in AAA. Bob Feller threw harder than anyone that's ever pitched. Randy Johnson's got nothing on Bob Feller. So that's the Ray Boone we're talking about. And a lot of those guys back then, that's what they were like. We were the rough and tumble guys.
So I think we're a lot like that too. I got some of that in me where I'm trying to fight.
Yeah. And he told me all the time, you'd fight about it. And it was always Ted Williams. So the Barry Bonds starts becoming the Barry Bonds that we watch. The greatest, I don't care what anybody says, the greatest hitter, baseball player I've ever seen. And second place to me is not even close. It's not even close. So we'd have this argument. Finally, along the years, Bob Boone finally admitted it. So I get a phone call. It's a Sunday day game in Seattle. I jump on the plane right after Gramps gets rushed to the hospital. They got him on all these drugs, and he can't talk. And but he can write down on a notepad, and that's how we're communicating. We're talking about. I said, Gramps, how you feeling? He's typical Gramps. He's like, well, I've been better. And he says, give me the pad. And I hand him the pad, and he writes down. And this is when I knew. He writes down, this Jake Peavy kid coming up at the Padres, look out for him. He's going to be a really good pitcher. That was the first part. And the second part, he says, and yes, Barry Bonds is a better hitter than Ted Williams. And Peave, right there, I kind of teared up because I knew that man's going to die because he's never going to come back to live it down that he admitted that. But it always stuck in my head, but it was always the Peavy to start. because he was a scout. He was still scouting, and at that point in his life, he was 83 years old. But he'd been scouting so long, they'd let him. He'd go out to the Padre game and turn in a report and whatnot. So he was always giving me his next guy that he really liked. So you were his guy, and then the Barry Bonds comment, and then I believe the next day he passed away. So that's the last note I got from him. It was pretty cool.
Super cool, Booney. Wow, that's a he must have saw me on a good day. But
I'll
look,
tell you what, the career you had, you didn't let him down. Gramps,
but I just lost my grandpa just a few years back at 90 years old. And you talk about those generations that came before us, and it's one of my problems with some of the game and where we've got to in baseball is we haven't properly. I understand the change and how everything's constantly evolving, and we are, but at the end of the day, what we're involved in baseball, and it's not rocket science, it's baseball. And yes, it's involved, but principalities and the principles of hitting and pitching, a lot of it's still the same and will always be because it's baseball. And we play to the scoreboard. And just hearing a story back, and you talk about your grandpa and how those players were and how stubborn,
yeah,
not always
stubborn.
Not always right, but my God, we're losing so many greats in and around the game. Losing Ricky just hurt in a way. I know you had some time with him, but the older generations, I know we get bitter as we get older, and they didn't do it like we did, or this and that. And I'm trying to get that out of me, but I want some of it in me. And I'll tell you this, and I tried to start with saying that about your family. You got to reverence how we all got here and the path that it took to forge for us to be able to do what we did. That generation did it. I'm missing them as they pass too.
You know what I thought was pretty cool? Yesterday in camp, the Padres, one of the brass in the Padres organization brought out the prospects to talk to the alumni, and what he said to them, he said, "Hey, kids," and these guys were all from 17 to 24 years old, and they were prospects that had been drafted recently by the Padres, and they got up and said a little bit about each other, told their story a little bit, and then they wrapped it all up with the message of, hey, look at the alumni around the room. They paved the way for you guys to have the things you have these accommodations that necessarily Randy Jones, who's with us here in camp, he didn't have the accommodations that the kids have today, especially at the minor league level. I talked to Randy, and he was lucky to have his stuff on a rope in a bag. He was lucky to have it nailed. These guys got full caterers. They've got massage therapists. They've got it all. But it was pretty cool hearing them talk about paying it forward. And they know what they have because of the guys in the room, the alumni, the ex-players, had paved the way for with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I thought that was a cool message to hear, especially for the guys like Randy Jones. He's 75 years old. He played a long time ago, but to hear young kids still have appreciation for the players that came before, I think it's a good message, and I think it's something you got to, like we did, you got to pay it forward.
Well, and you hear the Padres start talking about that and getting us all back with fantasy campers around the prospects, going out to Camp 44 and spend some time with the major league starters around what Joe Musgrove, Michael King, and those guys are doing, Cease, getting ready, and just trying to bring the togetherness. And it's just been nice for Mike Schilt on down through the ownership to have us back around. And that's what we're talking about, kind of lost in the game. And I don't want to sound bitter against analytics because you've heard us talk pitching. Knowing all of that stuff and taking it into the start is critical. Prep is everything, and that's a lot of information analytics that a lot of people provide. But where I do have a huge miss with some of the front offices is when these guys in the front office won't take the time to reverence what a Bret Boone has to say. What more do you need to do, Bret Boone, to have a relevant opinion on baseball? It's all you know. It's all your family's known. You had a pretty decent career, kid. And so it drives me crazy when that's not respected amongst some of the front office guys who are very good at looking at stuff and putting numbers together and help. But for these players to hear from you, myself, and Hoffy, and guys who have been there and done it, and not that we want to change anything, we just want to love on them and be appreciated as former players. And it's nice to see some of that coming back in the game.
Yeah, it's cool. And it's All we can do is what we do. You talk about the front office. They have changed a little bit the dynamic of the front office, and it is analytical. And there's a lot of guys up there that haven't been in the game long term. Very knowledgeable, smart, technically know the
Sure.
numbers, can run the numbers. But a lot of times that doesn't replace being between the lines and knowing what it's really out like there. Because sometimes the numbers, you can throw those numbers out the window. You can throw them in the trash can because when push comes to shove and everything's on the line, it's about heartbeat. It's about what's in the individual, and you can't run it like you run a Walmart because athletes don't work that way.
No, the game of baseball works just like this. Me and you face each other. Well, I've got a scouting report and know everything about Bret Boone. I've certainly watched my last, or all the head-to-head matchups is what I'll leave on, but I watched your last 50 at bats coming into that game versus right-handers. And then I've watched our history. And then I have a scouting report of what I think I'm going to do to Bret Boone.
Right.
Once you step in the box, um, where Ichiro, or if he got on or out in the first, if it's the fourth, all of that depends into the pitch selection. And then it happens like this: I throw you a pitch. Me and my catcher are trying to read what you're done and what your prep work says you're doing. And then the
Absolutely.
scout report's a very fluid thing, pitch to pitch, for the rest of the night. And that's where some of the information gets lost on, is the guys on the field are not able to adjust. They've got to stay to kind of a game plan. And the best in the world, you weren't the same guy in your third at bat as you were in the first because of what we had taught you and you had learned in those at bats.
Right.
That's
What
hard sometimes for guys who are sitting in a box and not having that control to give it up and understand that it's an important part.
Right. It's the situation of the game. It's who's on deck, who's hitting behind me.
That's right. What's the
Well,
score?
right. What's the score? How am I going to be pitched? It's all different. Is it to lead off an inning in a 6-0 game, or is it 2-2 in the eighth with a base open? The predictability comes pretty different, and the chess match continues going on. I go deeper than what has happened that particular game. What have I been effective with against you, or what have you gotten me out with that game? Are you going to go to the well again? This is all that chess match that pitcher and hitter go through, which is what I love about the game, the mental side and the thought process and the preparation. Before I leave that on deck circle, I got my plan. Sometimes you're going to kick my ass, sometimes not. But if I stick with that plan over 162, and I always say this to young players, have a plan, execute plan. Don't waver from your plan, because the guys that
And,
waver are the guys that get all out of whack. Over 162, you have a plan every day. Some days you're going to win, some days you're going to lose. But in the long haul, I think a plan, and a solid plan, you're going to give yourself the best chance to succeed.
oh, yeah, let's dive in on this a little bit deeper, because I love, and you're like, let's go deeper into game planning and management. If you see me talking about a game on MLB Network and I have a problem with someone's plan, it's not that I have a problem with their plan. Their plan in the moment of the game was wrong. For the situation of the game would be wrong. And I think the coolest thing about this week is in our clubhouse with 18 or so all-stars and Hall of Famers and Cy Youngs to MVPs. You've got some pretty good experience in that room. The biggest takeaway from Gary Templeton to Terry Kennedy on down through the new age younger guys, we were taught to play to a scoreboard. The scoreboard is the guru. It is the baseball god. You reference, Tim Flamery tells the story of you're going in the Himalayas to find the baseball god. You think you're finding this older gentleman who's going to tell you all the rules. You find the scoreboard. The scoreboard tells you everything you need to know. What pitch to throw, what score is it? What out? How many outs are we? The scoreboard is what you play to, and it tells me how I'm pitching. If I've got a 4-run lead, my game plan versus you is completely different than an 0-0 game. Look at the scoreboard, follow the scoreboard. Do what your team needs in the moment that the game says it needs. We've now, with the new age analytics, are far from at times reverencing what the game and situation needs. And that's where I have a problem with the new age plan and getting your A swing off at all times and so on.
It's interesting you say that. You say you're gonna counter me by how I look, how I take a pitch, my body language. You and your catcher are gonna discuss those things. That's interesting to me because as a hitter, That's an asterisky thing too. Like I've got my plan, but if I run into a guy that's thinking a little deeper than the average pitcher out there, if you're watching my feed, if you watch how I took that fastball down the middle and you're kind of giving me that look like, wait a minute, how do he take
He
that
wasn't
pitch?
on time. Was he on time in his
Or
take?
he's looking for something else. Now I might have to adjust that chess match change I used to have, and I tell this all the time. Jason Varitek in Boston. He used to be a guy I'd go there, and I had my plan, and I'd come to the plate. I might take a fastball located on the outside corner with runners on base. I'm sitting on soft. I'm sitting soft. Excuse me. Jason would lift his mask, look at me just subtly, and say, "Boone, I guess we're not looking for a heater." Wham! All of a sudden, throw all the chess pieces off the board. I got to revamp. Now, am I going with that plan, or has he just countered me? And he's got to think about it too. Is Booney going to switch up, or is he going to stay with the original plan? That's the great part of the game. And people ask me, probably ask you all the time, do you miss the game? I don't miss chasing sliders off the plate and going back to the dugout, but I miss that inner battle, that battle between pitcher, hitter, catcher. Man,
Yeah,
I miss
you're
that.
all over it.
I miss that chess match, but I don't miss the rest of it. I don't miss feeling bad and going 0 for 4. And like I said, chasing that slider off the plate.
No, look, I don't miss that part of the game either. They asked me if I wish I could pitch one more time. You think I want to go out there and face that lineup? And we talked about it. The Seattle Mariners and you guys, when I got to the big leagues, you're our rivals. When interleague play starts, we don't have a rival. They stick us with you guys. That lineup, you guys are off the best 116 wins. That lineup. Hey, here's what you made me think about: Jason Varitek, Buster Posey. I would get ready to be throwing a pitch, and Buster would be looking. There'd be plenty of times I wouldn't be ready. Buster would just be watching body language and getting to the pitch. And once we found out what you were sitting on, now there's two ways to go about it. I know what you're sitting on, so I know how you're chasing that slider off the plate is because you're sitting soft like you are. I like that. Now I'm throwing you that pitch that you're sitting on just in my location, because if you're sitting on it, it's hard for you to see it and there it is. But if I'm going to make it end where I make it end, you're still going to be out because it's my pitch. I would go back and forth with Adrian on this a lot, because we would be facing Edison Volquez, say, with his changeup, and Adrian would go up there. He goes, "I'm sitting this changeup all night long," and we would go back and forth. And I'd say, "Adrian, it's his best pitch. You can't sit on his best pitch. It's unbelievable." And then I said, once he understands you're sitting on it, he's going to throw it this far off, and your eyes are this big because you're waiting on it, but it's still his pitch. So the cat and mouse game, you're exactly right. I think some of the new age analytics have taken out that art form of let's get these guys as big, as strong as we can, do this really good for as long as you can, not the thought process. And that's where the third time through the lineup and all that stuff comes in. Booney, I had to face the third time through the lineup my entire career. Not ever was that an option. Well, to do that, there had to be an art form and some of that thought process you're talking about going on if you had any chance.
Yeah. And they always say, hitter has the advantage. You've seen all your stuff twice. Well, depending on what's happening in the game, it depends who's on that mound. That guy on the mound might have the advantage with what's happened in the first two at bats. Nobody ever looks at that scenario. They always look, you've seen more pitches from him, so obviously you have the advantage. No, he's gotten me out my first two at bats with everything. So my thing is, I don't have anything to look for because he's getting me out with all of it. If he's just getting me out with one pitch, hey, maybe I get to the point, but he's getting me out with everything. I think it's advantage pitcher. So there's two sides of that argument. But I don't know, people that talk about it, they just kind of cut it off. And it's like, there's so many nuances to it. There's so many levels that people don't have time and probably can't even comprehend what we're talking about. A lot of people when we get into the weeds.
Well, yeah, it's why I fight for the dugout to get some power back. I think we've seen the dugout from the managers through the coaches not making a lot of decisions that kind of go against common sense or what our eyes and the scout instinct of what we've seen. And I fight for the dugout to have some authority to make some in-game calls in the front office to be okay with that because of the cat and mouse game. And if you don't think Bruce Bochy in a 9-inning game, or Dave Righetti, a pitching coach in San Francisco, is watching and we're understanding it all together and making adjustments, if you're not allowed to do that and you've got to go with what the numbers may say all the time, I believe you're against the eight ball. And I know it's why Boch and some of these gamblers and people who are allowed to are pulling titles off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, Dave Roberts and the Dodgers did that for the first time this year.
Yeah.
It was not as scripted as it's always been.
Right.
And they were, Dave Roberts got to go out there and ask Blake Trine how he felt. Keep him in the game. There was plenty other, Walker Buehler and all that stuff. That's not scripted. That's all feel. And it paid off.
The great ones have gut and they got feel. Okay, the Hall of Fame class of 2025 has been announced. I think there was no surprise with Ichiro getting in. I got a chance to play with him for 5 years, and man, changed the way people defend. I watched defenses change when Ichiro came to the plate, and he changed. I've never seen a man get a hit in more ways. I think we assumed he was going to get in. The next two are interesting ones. Billy Wagner, who had a great.
Hey, let me stop you there. I want to ask you just expand on Ichiro. We'll get to Billy and CC. Hey, what was that like? First off, him coming over and just the craze that was upon the Northwest.
Well, that was my first year back, 01, back to the Mariners. I started my career and I kind of went full circle. I came back in 01. It was a great team, Peeves. We had a great mix. We had future Hall of Famers on there. We had Cy Young Award winners. We had batting champs. I had Johnny Olerud and Edgar, and we still had a Jay Buhner. We still had the Sheriff, Norm Charlton, in the bullpen. We had Lou as our skipper. So there was a lot of characters on that team. Mike Cameron in center field.
That's the Wild West, baby.
Yeah, but I remember getting there, and my hitting group was, I think, Olerud, Ichiro, myself, Edgar. I forget who the fifth guy was. I just remember that first day. Ichiro kind of quiet, but I couldn't get over he had Ichiro on his back. And all of us are just kind of looking around. Big John Olerud's going, what's up with this?
Did I have John?
Yeah. It's like, what's up with the Ichiro thing? So, we're watching him go about his business. Now, the droves of Japanese media and the cameramen, I've never seen anything like it. The last time I'd seen anything like that was Hideo Nomo when he came over for the Dodgers. He was the first big Japanese star to cross over into Major League Baseball. Right. And when we'd go to LA, it was amazing how much Japanese coverage there was. But the clubhouse was packed. It was like a postseason atmosphere in spring training just because of all the extra media credentials.
That's right. That's interesting.
So we saw that. Now, once the dust had cleared and we got into spring, we got going a week or two, we got to know him a little bit. And he came out of his shell. We found out right away he knows a lot more English than he leads on to. He was very charismatic, very funny. And it sticks with me. I remember Lou kind of talking, because Lou would just talk out loud, whatever's going through his
Lou's
brain.
cannon.
Yeah, he'll just tell everybody in the dugout, and Ichiro would be hitting. He's like, I don't think this kid can pull a ball, And he'd go to Ichiro and he'd say, Ichiro, can you just prove to me that you could pull a ball? And he'd look Skip right in the eyes and say, no. He'd just say no.
No.
Now, as spring training went on, I came to find out that, he's really behaving, even though it's his first year as a big leaguer. He's got a lot of years logged over in Japan, and he's a rock star over there from what everybody tells me. They said he's like Elvis Presley in Japan. So I kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt as this guy's a veteran guy, even though he's a rookie in the big leagues. He's a veteran guy. He's not about lighting the world on fire in spring training. He's about getting his body and getting his swing ready for when the lights go on and opening day, because he was so methodical about it, how he went about his day. He went from X to Z to Y, and this is what he did. He didn't bend for anybody. He didn't cater to anybody. He just did his thing. He didn't have a real good spring. He hit some balls decent. I don't think he hit a ball to the right of second base in spring training. Then all of a sudden we get to opening day. He gets a hit in his first game. I don't think he ever hit under 300 for the rest of his career. The thing I remember, and this is the funniest part, opening day, and I don't know if I told you this story, but this kind of wraps Ichiro up in what he was really like. We take the field in Seattle for opening day, and I got the second base umpire, and he stands out at second base, but it's opening day. He's kind of moving around. Hey, how's your off season? This and that. I get to talk to him all the time. So he's wandering out to right field, and this new kid's running out, Ichiro. And I see him exchanging pleasantries, and he comes back into me. I forget who the umpire was. I can't remember, but he says to me, he goes, Booney, he goes, I just talked to the new kid, Ichiro. I said, yeah. I said, what did he have for you? He goes, I told him, hey, welcome to the big leagues and to have a great season. You know what he said to me? I said, I could only imagine. He goes, he told me what's happened in home slice and kept running. I said, that's Ichiro Suzuki right there. That's the charismatic. That's the funny guy I'm talking about. But then when the game started, he was very methodical. It was always about hits. He had to get a lot of hits, and that's what motivated him every year was 200 hits. As far as defensively, he was the best catch throw guy I've ever seen defensively from the outfield position. He was just technically so solid. Ran the bases, was all over the bases. And the one thing I think he did is he changed defenses. I mean, for the first time, I saw big league shortstops who I hold in very high esteem because I think they're the best defenders on the field at all times. I saw all-star Gold Glove shortstops changing how they defend and almost seeing a little anxiety in their face when Ichiro came to the plate because they'd never seen anything like it. They never seen anybody swinging as they're running out of the box and beating out a routine ground ball to short. Yeah. So that was him in a nutshell. But on that team, that group of guys, it was a special group. Ichiro fit right in.
Yeah, first ballot Hall of Famer. That's fun stories to hear. Somebody who had the front row seat that you had from his first year on to see it all kind of come together, and you recognize that. I'll tell you this: he can pull a ball, and here's how I know. I had obviously been in the big league since '02, so I'd faced Ichiro and you guys at least once every year, and then too many times in spring training. What you said proved true. This guy had to hit the ground ball if he was going to hit it on the ground. If you were going to let him hit the ball on the ground, he had to pull it, or he had to hit it directly at your defender, or it was a hit, right? Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to do was throw him balls to get him to hit it in the air because staying inside of it, it was hard for him to hit homers. But he could get the head out and launch homers. World Baseball Classic 2006, we advanced to Anaheim for the second round. I'm starting game 1 versus Japan. 0-0. I go to get a strike over. This guy's never pulled the ball off Jake Peavy in his life. 0-0. He goes in the right center field bleachers, 1-0 in Japan, and started my day like that. Asshole. That goes back to the cerebral. This guy knew me and knew what I was going to do. Took a shot. Watch, I'm going to get my boys going. And he never had that approach against me. And then he screwed me up even worse. And I know he has this ability that he will do this if he wants to, and the game calls for him to take a chance. As good and tough as an out. You said it earlier, Barry Bonds, there's not anybody I faced even close second to what he did. As far as tough of an out and keeping him off base was a must, or he was touching home plate, was Ichiro. Right.
Yeah, he was tough. And the funny thing about it, to add on to, the what's happened in home slice, he didn't hit many home runs when I was with him, but when he did, he would touch home plate, come in. If I was in the dugout, I'd go to give him a high five or whatever, and he'd look at me dead in the eyes and always say, "Hey, Boone, sorry about that home run." And he'd apologize when he hit a home run in a facetious way, but that's what I'm talking about, the humor side of him. You played against CC Sabathia. Ace had a great career, 251 wins, over 3,000 punch-outs. People ask me about the ballot going in. I have CC. I said I think CC will make it into the Hall of Fame. I don't know if necessarily it's going to be on the first ballot. I know Wags was getting down there in years. He's been on the ballot quite a few years now, and I'm looking at the list of closers. You got Mariano, you got Trevor at the top, but not too many closers have been let in since then. I thought he was going to get in. I didn't know your thought on CC being a first ballot and Wags finally getting in.
Well, I'll start with CC, and let's start with Wags because that one's an easier one for me. They did the right thing. This guy, and because you played against him, Billy Wagner was throwing 100 miles an hour, and however they want to say they were getting these speeds back then, but a lot of times we're talking ray gun crossing the plate. this 100, you can't tell me that the way they're measuring balls right out of the hand today is not leading to some of the tick and velocity. I know it's certainly guys bigger, stronger, faster, better training, but a lot of it, the analytics and the way we can measure this stuff. Billy Wagner was throwing what Aroldis Chapman and these boys were throwing back in the day. It was a legit 100 with a wipeout slider, as devastating as a closer could be stuff-wise. And then the longevity, the 16 years. Billy Wagner, when you look at strikeouts per 9, the career 2.3 ERA, and only Mo has a career lower one. The 9th reliever in, rightfully so. And he's a good guy. It's fun to see good guys go in. On CC, I think here's my case for CC and why I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I think they got it right, Booney. For me, fame comes in a moment. Greatness comes with longevity. 19 years, and the numbers that you said, 250 wins, and 07, we won a Cy Young together. Me and CC had the same PR girl, so I know him and Amber extremely well. And then for me, what sets it over the edge, if you have those numbers, collection of numbers, and I know people talk about the high ERA, but that 09 championship doesn't get delivered without him being the ALCS MVP and doing what CC had done the year previous or so when he got traded to Milwaukee. We saw what this guy's about. I think when you do it, I think when you have 19 years of greatness, you figure it out in the back half of your career and evolve and become a different dude. To stay around that long and have some good years, when you do it in the postseason at the level he did, I think it sends that bump up. And then he's been such a great ambassador for the game. I think you combine all that with how much the writers love him, and rightfully so. With 19 years and the numbers, he was going in. Why not first ballot?
Yeah, and I think that's the 4th closer that's gone. And you got K-Rod from Anaheim years. He's ahead of him. He's got 437 saves. And then Franco, the Mets legend who had 424 saves, he's not in. He's off the ballot now. But I think it's after Lee Smith went in, he was number 3 behind Trevor and behind Mariano. It was Lee Smith. Now you got Wags in. I think you're right. Once they're finally accepting the fact that, hey, the closer is a big part of this game. And when you got the numbers, you're going to be recognized like all the other positions. Yeah, I think well-deserved for all 3 when looking back on it.
Been a pretty cool week hanging out with our closer here for a long time, having Hoffy in camp.
Hoffy, man, it's always great seeing Trevor, and me and him have been buddies since high school. Our families kind of grew up together and vacationed. Always great having Trevor around. Just that Trevor smile he's a special guy, and it's cool.
Big energy.
Recently I had Tariq Skubal, the Cy Young Award winner from 2025 Detroit Tigers. He also won the Triple Crown. Well, I'm looking at you. 2007, you win the Cy Young. You win the Triple Crown. And I asked him. He's a young kid. He's a humble kid. I got to play golf with him Friday before I came over here and got to pick his brain. He's kind of an old school guy. Like he kind of thinks and talks like we did, which I was really excited about. Very humble, very appreciative of where he's come. He says, Booney, people don't know. 3 years ago, I gave up like 40 home runs. I knew I had to get after it the next offseason, and I worked my butt off. So this Cy Young just didn't come out of nowhere. And he said, and I know people are gunning for me now that I've won this, so I got to move on. For you in 2007, when you won that Cy Young, it's something for the rest of your life. Wherever you go, you're going to be, hey, former Cy Young Award winner Jake Peavy. Is that something that changes your life in the moment?
You don't think about it, but it certainly does. Because in the moment, you understand just what Tarek said. You made some adjustments. There's no shortcut to success. The shortcut to success is the long way. These guys who win this award didn't wake up and put a season like this together and come through some trials and tribulations and figuring out who you are. And kind of in the moment where Tarek Skubal's at, you realize quickly you become the best of the league at something. You've got a target in your back. Every start you've got, somebody's out to prove you from spring training on. So in the moment, you're kind of just worried about trying to figure out how you sustain that. As you get older, you retire and you get like, in the space I am now. And having that tied to you is certainly a beautiful thing. Tarek Skubal, here's what I'll say about him. He comes across and carries himself, pitches a lot like an old school guy. So it's refreshing to hear somebody who spent time with him say that. He gets taken a lot like I think I got taken, and I don't necessarily like the. I was very animated when I pitched and emotional and passionate I am about everything in life, as you know. A lot of us guys who are that get labeled as we're not out there thinking or we're not in the game plan weeds like we talked about earlier. But I certainly was. But I was an emotional, passionate dude, and it actually worked to my advantage because I could get this batter frazzled and not maybe thinking quite like he should and get too mad at me, throw me a fastball. You know those guys. Derek Scooble's out there pulling the string. He uses the same thing. He's cerebral. That changeup's his pitch. When he gets everybody thinking that 97, 98 is coming, but he goes to that. He's a pitcher. His stuff is devastating, but when you put somebody who's got devastating stuff, and he also understands the art of pitching, that's who he is. Watch him pitch. He is location. He moves it in and out. The changeup's his pitch. He understands how to get it set up, get guys thinking it's coming. It's over.
Last night, you guys had a cool segment. It was you and Mark Davis came in for the opportunity, Randy Jones, and you had a roundtable and you just talked to the campers, and it was a Cy Young. The three guys in Padres history with Cy Youngs. And I listened to a little bit. I wasn't there the whole time, but I was very interested in your Roger Clemens. I was wondering on the Bret Boone podcast if you can share what you learned from Roger Clemens and how you paid it forward.
Well, yeah, no, look.
I love this story. I love this story. Yeah. It's great. I had never heard it before until last night. I peeked my head in and I heard you talk about it. I listened.
Yeah, well, first off, I mean, to get a chance to be around, you make it to the big leagues at a young age, you're going to play with some guys that you've been watching the game all the way up until you got there. And Roger Clemens, I mean, you win 7 Cy Youngs, you've got some fans out there who are young pitchers. That was myself. And then, so now fast forward to 2004, I had my first time to meet him. We go on this Japan trip together. Major League Baseball would take an all-star team every other year over. And Roger was on this trip. He won his 7th Cy Young on the trip, getting to celebrate with him. But I go in the training room, and I'm paying attention to this guy and what he's doing, prepping for a start. I want to be just like him and win this award. And I go in the training and there's not a whole lot of motivation over there. That the pay is what it is. It's just pride on the line. And so a lot of guys are unmotivated where they wouldn't be over here. Roger's getting on the massage table, getting his massage. And he's got the hot stuff. And you know what we're talking about. You've been in the training room, the hot stuff.
There's different colors.
You start going to the end, it's unbearable at times.
Yeah.
And he's getting it Booney from head to toe, bud. He's on the massage table face down, and it's going from the back of his neck to his Achilles, all over his body. I go, are you kidding me, bro? And he looks up and he goes, look, you can't get comfortable. Because you get complacent and get comfortable out there, you're going to get clipped. He goes, tonight I'm unmotivated. I'm not going to get comfortable out there. I'm going to be mad, and I'm going to go out and give it to who's going to walk up there thinking that they got Roger Clemens walking in the building. Then he made this move when he got up off the table. He put his uniform on, kind of came in. He grabbed a little bit more of that hot stuff and went right down the jock and kind of no man's land there and rubbed a little bit on that taint. And, I said, are you kidding me? And he just kind of looked at me and smiled. And I just, like I said, he goes out and pitches and does well. We celebrate a Cy Young on this trip. This guy is my hero. I'm friends with Roger Clemens. Here's 05. I get to start opening day. I'd worked on it a little bit in spring training. Didn't let a whole lot of people know to kind of get the game plan together. But here's opening day in San Diego, and I walk in front of whoever there in the training room and say, "Look, I learned something from Clem that I'm paying forward and taking it with me." And so from there on out, when you watch Jake Peavy pitch and you wonder how there was some emotion and passion, I was as uncomfortable as Roger was because there was some of that on my taint. And look, my teammates got a huge kick out of it. They knew it was. Some of them participated from time to time. Awfully tough to get off in the shower, though. You know, it stings even worse in the shower coming off, Booney.
That is awesome. I'm telling you, it doesn't surprise me. You do what you got to do. You can do what you got to do. But I thought that was a freaking awesome story. This offseason, Mets, you got a Cohen owner of the Mets, kind of rogue, doesn't care about how much penalty he's gonna suffer. He's gonna pay his guys. He's gonna try to win at all costs, and money is no object for him. You look at the Dodgers; they found a loophole. They're putting this money out 8, 9, 10 years. And man, they put together an unbelievable roster.
Yeah.
I look at it. I looked at the Soto signing. I get it. I never thought it was going to pass Ohtani. Ohtani, for obvious reasons, when he hit the 700 mark, we thought, well, that's Ohtani. His marketability off the field. He's two players in one. We got it. When Soto went there, I went, whoa. And then all of a sudden, with the way the Dodgers are spending and putting all this money off and building, what I'm looking at right now is maybe the greatest collection of talent I've ever seen on a major league roster. I know the basic agreement's coming up. I don't know how much you were involved in the union as a player. I was a rep for Cincinnati, so I educated myself on it. I had an idea what was going on. It's coming up in 26. Through moves like this, the Dodgers becoming so powerful. Not only that, it seems like every free agent wants to go to LA on top of it, which for the Dodgers is a good thing. For everybody else is not a good thing. Do you see this thing becoming a problem with the 2026 collective bargaining coming up?
I think you're all over it. Look, it's certainly going to be an issue. I think, if you want my honest opinion on the Dodgers, I think they understand that there's going to be some reform, and it's certainly going to be on the table. And what it is going to be what it is. We'll see how it gets there. But we certainly know that there's going to be some reform. I think the Dodgers have the money and understand that there's reform coming. Why not go ahead and play with the rules given and go ahead and spend that money and get the collection of talent they got in the room foreseeable future, and we'll see how it affects. But you're right that the Dodgers are now as big of a villain if you're not a Dodgers fan because of that collection of talent. And look, are they going to win some World Series? Probably so. Are they going to win every year? Absolutely not. And the harder they come, the harder they fall type thing. Whoever does get by the Dodgers in the postseason and punch their ticket, it'll be that much sweeter when it happens. Certainly for the Padres, the Giants, who I'm in bed with and played for. But the Soto stuff, I'm interested to see how this works out. I was like you, whoa. I love what the Mets had going last year. Carlos Mendoza is a stud. I know you know this because he was under me, learned from your brother, and in
Really
New
like
York.
him.
And what he did with that team, he had players throwing their gloves in the stand. They lost their first 5. He stayed even keel. He's positive. He's encouraging. And he kept that group together, got amazing things. Lindor is starting to look like a true leader and really progressing into a team guy. They played unselfish baseball and to the scoreboard like we talked about. I'm going to be interested to see how Juan Soto fits in that mix because he fit in great in New York, but maybe not so well in San Diego. And San Diego got better without him. So what type of player are they getting? How motivated is he for the rest of this contract? And how does it play out in the back end, I think, are the questions. The Mets and Steve Cohen and that fan base are going to be excited. And again, I don't get mad because I'm not tied to these organizations or not fans. I think everybody wants me, especially when they ask me about it. And certainly all the fans are around the teams I'm associated with. They're as upset. And this is so wrong. Look, these owners have the money in their I love Stevie Cohen because he's a fan. He's a fan of the New York Mets and of baseball and knows what it can do to a community, a city. And for him to have the money and go for that, the Dodgers doing the same. Look, we did it a few years ago in San Diego. We were signing guys and trading Soto. Nobody was complaining then. So I'm fine with it, and it'll be fun to beat them one day.
Last thing, and I'll let you go. Last night, you jammed a little bit with Tim Flannery. Tim Flannery, Lunatic Fringe. I know it seems like everybody in baseball, if you've been around in some capacity, you've hooked horns with Flan at one time or another. I was there in 2000, the one year I played in San Diego for Bruce Bochy, and Flan was my third base coach. So I got a full year of Flan. I went out when he was doing gigs. Hey, Booney, I'm going to this bar tonight after the game, and we'd all hop in our car after the game and go watch him play. He's been doing it for a long time. You've been playing a long time. I think you learned a lot from from Flan. Just tell me a little bit about your relationship, how special of a guy he is to you on, from a baseball perspective, but from a music perspective as well.
Yeah, well, look, he's given me the best gift, other than children coming into the world. I think the best gift I've ever been given was given to me by Tim Flannery, and that's the gift of music. He gave me my first guitar, Booney, when I was 20 and came up to the big leagues, and just I wasn't, Nev and the guys, they were a little bit older than me, all established. It wasn't like I was getting asked to go out all the time with the guys or even come to their room to hang out. You just kind of, those days, you be quiet and you came along when you got asked. So I found myself. Flan loves an audience, and who doesn't when you're playing some music? I'd go sit in those stairwells with him. And shortly, a few weeks after, I'm asking him, hey, maybe teach me this song or that. Here comes a road trip. I've got a guitar on that day game in my locker, and a note from him says, bring this with you. If you learn how to tune it, I'll teach you how to play it. And so the rest of 2002, me and him are sitting around, and that gift of music, I pass it on to all of my children. It's the most special time I get with my children, that we sit around and play in the house or do whatever. And it's such therapy for all of us to check out and have the gift of, and then the release of what it was in my hotel room away from baseball. When you're playing music, it's like counting. You can't think about anything else, or you're not playing very good music and you're not tuned into what you're doing. So truly is an escape. The spirituality of it, just the way it makes you feel, a song and lyrics. So all of that combined is this guy. I loved music, but the gift of to play it, and I still do it and do it with my children. And then how about this? Now fast forward, I'm a novice trying to learn in 2002. 2014, Boat says, hey, I hear you're staying up all night playing some country music, and you got anything left? Flan texted me the next day and said the band's getting back together. I traded from the Boston Red Sox to the Tim Flannery, Bruce Bochy. Me and Flan are back playing music. I'm a competent musician now. And then he's friends with Chris Robinson and the Bobby Weir of the Grateful Dead. And now I'm hanging out with my heroes with Flan. We won a World Series and played some concerts and some after parties after it got done, Booney.
That's pretty awesome. And what's cool, I know you have a special relationship with him, but yesterday he was telling the story. You weren't around, but you could tell how much he appreciates you. And he told that story. He said, a lot of people when I'm playing music when I was younger, sitting around the clubhouse, everybody wants to play a guitar and they're really interested, but they never are willing to do it. He goes, that guy right there, and he pointed to you. You didn't hear him. You were walking out of the room. He goes, that guy right there, he's the only one that took me up on my offer. When he said, figure out how to tune it, he goes, he's the only one that did. And that's why he's playing with me tonight. So that was pretty cool. It's cool to see how have bonded that way.
Yeah, no, look, to encourage any young listeners or just any listeners, it's a whole lot easier today. The internet will teach you how to play. Back then, you had to be with there was books that they made.
Yeah.
And it was the Wild West of learning how to play. You can get on and go sit at a piano and try to make some sense of it, or pick up a musical instrument and watch how much better it makes your life. It is like this, though, Booney. We talked about it. There's no shortcut to success. Music, you have to work at it. You have to put in some time and energy and effort to make it worth something. 6 months to a year of not being very good and teaching your body to do something you don't think it can do. It can. You just got to put it to the test.
You got it. Jake Peavy, man, I appreciate it. This has been awesome. I appreciate you taking the time. For those of you watching the Bret Boone podcast, now have our own YouTube channel. Check it out. For those of you download the podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep it here. Thanks, Peavy.